Let's- Hi, my name's Ryan, and I'm the founder of After PhD, and I'm with Matteo Tardelli, a consultant and project leader at PreScouter Inc. He completed his PhD in 2017 from Immunology and Metabolism. He previously authored the Salem Leap For PhDs during the COVID pandemic, and is about to release a new book called Beyond Academia: Stories and Strategies for PhDs Making the Leap to Industry. So, firstly, just welcome, and again, I'm happy to have you here.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Ryan, for having me.
Yeah, so I think firstly, I think it's important when we talk about this book, Beyond Academia. I'm just kind of curious about your inspirations for the book. And I know like you talked about, like at least through LinkedIn, about your that you wrote the Salmon Leak during the pandemic. And can you just maybe talk more about the experience and maybe what you learned from that experience going into this new book?
Sure, absolutely. So while I was looking into transitioning, careers from academia to industry myself, so I was already like to give a little bit of a background. I was
Mhm.
doing my second postdoc at Cornell in New York City, and I was really like, kind of trying to explore a little bit the post-academic kind of landscape outside, university research, and I was really kind of tried to struggle really to understand what was out there for me. I was really, looking out, for these titles and things that you find in industry, and I didn't really have any idea what these titles really meant, right? So I was like, wow, okay, what does really a CMC scientist mean, or things like that? What does a consultant in life science or like equity research kind of things and positions actually do and entitle? So I was really trying to understand this landscape outside academia. And at that time, I was really kind of trying to attend a lot of career development seminars already offered by my university, as well as, doing starting to do some career coaching for PhDs and things like that. So then the pandemic hit, and I was like, well, I've been learning so much myself, and why not really putting together into something that can be transferable for someone else, like, and really can someone else can read and use basically. As I think the research and the road to get there was pretty tough for me. Like many times in academia, also like in regards to your mentors and things, many times that they really have not much of an idea what careers outside academia are
Yeah,
like. So I'm
information
sure you can relate.
on that. Um,
So yeah, just saying. So I just put together these little experiments with someone Leap for PhD, and then that led me to my second publication, in which I really wanted to kind of understand and ask like professionals what their day to day is about. So I think in a nutshell, that was really what led me to my second publication. And in the meantime, actually, I transitioned myself into biotech and then into consulting. So I had like also a little bit of wealth of knowledge to really share with other people as well.
Yeah, and like I know in there's like a core element of the book. It's called LEAP, and it's like an acronym. Can briefly explain what that is for those like reading or kind of watching our talk?
Mhm. Sure. So basically, that's an acronym to that really inspired. It's basically the chapter titles for each of these four chapters that I try to put together in a way that um, I thought like putting an acronym was really like a good way to also remember
Yeah.
and guide the reader through the book. And so the LEAP itself really means like the first chapter will be learning about your professional and personal values. So I'll guide the reader through some value assessment exercises, which are actually very actionable. So I really ask them to go through, their values and really trying to assess what they really want in terms of for the next steps of their careers. While the second, the E will be explore your career change. And in that, I really write a lot about different kind of job options for PhDs. As I mentioned before, I really found myself many times really lost within these, job titles in industry. So I really want to make sure that the reader kind of understands the different kind of landscape and of jobs out there. So I really tried to put together about 20 options for PhDs that, and jobs that are out there, and really interviewed people that are actually doing these jobs. So really to get an insights from them what the job is really about. And the A will be, so we are LEA, and the A will be like apply to jobs beyond academia. And in that, I really put together some kind of advice on how to write a resume, put together a cover letter, really unlock some aspects of the hidden job market as well. Plus, I really interviewed other 10 PhDs that really transitioned to really kind of creative industries. So, for instance, I don't know, a neuroscientist that then became a VC, that went into VC capital and funding for startup, or other profiles that were really interesting. So I'll cover that in the apply to jobs beyond academia kind of chapter, while the last one will be pursue career in industry. So it's really a lot about interviewing, a lot about the power of storytelling itself, as well as some negotiation advice, in which I really try to summarize a little bit of things and tips and tricks for PhDs to really, kind of negotiate a salary that's is kind of comparable to their work.
Yeah, and are a lot of these PhDs, are they from just the United States, abroad? Just to get a good idea.
So they're all over the place. So there are about 50 people that I interviewed. So I have a bunch in the UK, some from France, so all around Europe, and East and West Coast in the US as well. So yeah, it's a nice and diverse kind of mix of people and a professional. So I think, yeah, it was really cool also to connect with them and really get insights on what's out there and how they made it really.
Well, and even like when these PhDs are like from all over the world, like you were kind of seeing these like they're like similar themes, right? From like talking to all of these people.
Mm-hmm.
Even,
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, overall, I guess those people really try to get out of their comfort zone. That I think it's a common theme. It might sound really obvious, but I think as PhDs, especially in academic research, we are so much in our bubble all the time. So you really kind of work with your colleagues. You probably hang out with your colleagues as well, and you're not really connected so much to the outside world. So my and their kind of advice was really trying to get out a bit of your bubble and really try to start a little bit talking to different people and networking a little bit and attending also events and things outside the bubbles. And then I think that was a common thing that made them kind of successful in their transitions. But it's really kind of personality specific and character specific as well. So the different stories are pretty different, but in common, they really have this really drive to kind of trying to understand something else outside of their specialities and research topics, which was something that is really very valuable in my opinion.
yeah, because I think some people think that when you get your PhD, you're done learning, but that's not
Right.
really, like you really have to like go outside of that to really like continue learning.
Mhm.
So and I wonder, like, I know you use the term leap a lot, and is there anything that universities can do so that it doesn't really have to be a leap, or is it just the nature
Mhm.
of academia, or is it?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a tough question. I really try to advocate for that as well, like in many posts and the things I really publish and the articles I publish online in different journals as well, because I really want um really people and PhDs really try to understand this a little bit earlier in their graduate studies as well. I also like look back at myself and really during my PhD, I really had no idea whatsoever what kind of career was out there for me, and just a postdoc could just feel as a natural development, but after that I wouldn't really know what to do with it after well, you could have gone of course in tenure track, but it's yeah, it's a little bit funny. So we don't really kind of get informed about it so much. So I think like universities also like Cornell, for instance, that back in the days was organizing a lot of career development seminars. It was really good, like really to see what you can do with your PhD. while I guess other universities in Europe, for instance, already back in the days when while I was doing my PhD, were not really equipped for that. But things are changing. So I think there's some developments, and I think there's many people like advocating for this course, like yourself with after your PhD, and other groups which are, I guess, really valuable to really raise awareness about this topic and really talking more about it. So I think that's valuable.
Yeah, because I remember like when I made the transition early, like there was like it was like a panel, so just like hearing people talk about their experience, which is
Mm-hmm.
like a simple thing, but I think it made a heck of a difference.
So
So
useful.
yeah, definitely. And so in the book, I'm going to read you a passage that I thought was really interesting, but it basically states that upon making the career leap, I realized that as PhDs, we have developed a resilience that allows us to adapt and learn quickly. While I'm grateful for the academic journey that led me here, I recognize that it did not provide me with the necessary tools to manage people, prioritize tasks, and cope with imposter syndrome. So, can you maybe answer like why do you think academia doesn't provide these skills? Is it just as you mentioned earlier about this bubble, but is there something else maybe that doesn't allow PhDs naturally to like get these skills?
Yeah. So, well, especially I guess with the project management side of things, as well as prioritizing tasks as well. I'm not really sure. At least in my experience, it was that you just have this. You're responsible for one single project. You're most likely the only person working on that project. Sometimes you're collaborating with other people, okay, but you most likely be the responsible for that project. And I think then when you then transition to an industry that is a little bit more multitasking, or you have like different projects to manage, it gets a little bit tough to do that. And I think, at least in my experience, you kind of tend to get overwhelmed by the different requests the different projects can have and things like that. And I'm always like very surprised about people telling other PhDs that, oh yeah, you're a great project manager. Uh, I'm not sure if that's the case. At least for me, it wasn't, because again, you just have this one project that you manage, which is great. But then if you have like two, three, four, five, six, it gets really overwhelming, and you don't really understand how to really prioritize tasks in a way that makes sense. For instance, like if I have a project deadline next week, and I receive like 2,000 emails about a project that as a deadline instead in 3 weeks, I should rather disregard this email and really focus on make the most kind of urgent project happen, rather than wasting time on other things and other emails that I need to get back to. But this is just an example, and I feel like that was a really difficult task to really learn while you're outside academia, and you really have to kind of manage different projects at any given time. So I think overall, my academic experience did not really provide me, much, kind of tools and things in regards to that. So yeah, I managed my project great. My deadline wasn't, it was just in the next 2 years or the next 3 years or things like
Yeah,
that. So it's not really tight, right?
yeah.
So it's like, yeah, okay, well, you get the exposure, but also not really.
Yeah, and like I think an element of it is like, yeah, you're working on a project and managing it, but it's like the stakeholder management and just kind of working with
Right.
people, which is like a whole nother like other ballgame. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I have a maybe a related question. So I've heard this sort of argument maybe made on LinkedIn and other kind of platforms when PhDs talk about it, but what is your take when PhDs talk about being overqualified for a role or being underqualified? Or do you generally believe that PhDs are in one of these categories, or is it just depending on the person? Like,
I really don't think so. I think we are qualified for anything we really want. It's just a way of, kind of translating your skills in a way that it's understandable to an employer. So I don't think we're really like overqualified in terms of course, like if you apply for jobs that do not require a PhD, you're obviously going to be qualified. But for the jobs that require a PhD out there, I think it's just a way. It's just a matter of really transferring your skills and translate them in a way that make they're kind of interesting to an employer. I think it's not really more than that. So also myself, like I transitioned like to a senior scientist position after 2 postdocs, and yeah, it could have sounded like I'm overqualified to that if I then need to work again at the bench, but yeah, it was not the case, for instance.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think that's a good way to put it because I think every circumstance is kind of unique. So, like,
Different.
especially depending on the job.
Mhm.
So, I know a big portion of the book is about like informational interviews, and you kind of I think you also mentioned a portion about LinkedIn. So, I'm kind of curious, like, for PhDs that are kind of maybe making the transition, like, where should they start with informational interviews? Like, should they start with folks with PhDs in their name already? Or should they kind of
Mhm.
already make the leap to maybe talk to people that don't have a PhD, but they're in a role that interests them?
For instance, like what I always recommend to people is really reaching out to some alumni from your school.
Mhm.
So for instance, these I find it like a very valuable kind of bunch of people that can really direct you in ways that are interesting because they've been in your shoes as well. They've been studying most likely at university. So I think that's a good way to start. And I
Mm.
think generally speaking, like we should sit down and really think like, okay, like whom do I really have in my network that can help me out studying like in some direction? So you could think of that, ex-colleague, like former colleagues that now is in industry or like a relative or things like that. So really like sitting down and trying to understand like how and really what your network is looking like at the moment. And then after that, really trying to start from that and really expand. So of course, LinkedIn, as we said, is really like a great tool for that. So what I always, also did in the past while I was applying to different jobs at different companies, I would reach out to some people on LinkedIn, say, hey, I applied for this senior scientist position. Do you, at your company, would you like to connect a little bit with me and then really explain me just in general about the company culture and if you know anything like in specific to this specific role, and you'll be surprised that people were always really kind of happy to connect and really chat a little bit about it if you're really interested in the role and things like that. So I think obviously LinkedIn is a great strategy for that, to really
Mm.
expand your network first of all, and really trying to get also your application a little bit on the top of the stack as well. So this could be like alumni network as well as online networking are really great options.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So this is kind of a last question, but I think it maybe will tie it together. So I know we both kind of advocate for kind of helping people leave academia, but do you think there's a way to help those that are currently in the system of academia? Like, is there a way that can be fixed or improved so that there isn't like this really need to like leave academia just to have a maybe more fulfilling career?
Hmm. Yeah, well, for sure. I think nowadays we all also like have these industry PhD programs in which you're a little bit of a hybrid between a pharmaceutical industry most likely kind of supporting your PhD and an academic PhD. Um, yeah, it's probably very different from a regular PhD, but it's a way to really bridge the gap between these 2 buckets between academia and industry. I think generally speaking, it's also interesting to, yeah, there are also like some institutes or some programs within academia that, for instance, are offering a little bit of a lookout into industry. Like, for instance, back in the days, I was attending like these a consulting club, for instance, and there was also like a drug discovery kind of program within my university. So I think these programs really try to bring in a little bit of the skills you will need then in industry, and then you can decide yourself whether that's a good path or not. So I think generally speaking, these programs are really interesting and could really bridge the gap between these 2 like buckets. But yeah, generally speaking, I think a career in academia can be sort of fulfilling. I guess you need to be the type for that. And, I'm not really a good grant writer, to be honest. So, yeah, that's not helpful if you want to become a PI, for instance. So, yeah, it's not for everyone. We just need to understand that, I guess.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So just like before we end, do you have anything to add or anything maybe that I missed that you think that's important for PhDs who are making the transition that, yeah, just anything I maybe didn't cover?
Mhm. Sure. I think, yeah, generally speaking, it's really a very good idea to work on yourself and trying to understand your values before you even approach the application process in general. Once you get there and once you really understand what kind of industries for you and what kind of roles like are really appealing to you, try to put together and craft something that it's an industry CV that really makes sense. And with that, I really mean that you have this document, try to get feedback from people, try to get feedback from friends and colleagues and things like that to really get out a decent kind of document that with your applications. And when you start applying, really, try to connect with people at the company, really trying to understand, a little bit of a further insights in the roles and things like that. And try to, yeah, like get that as a research project or things that or a thing like similar to that. So really do your research very well and really understand what you're applying for. And as I've also been there really trying to firing off a lot of applications like all over the place, and you get rejection and it's not nice, it's not fulfilling. So rather like sending out few applications that are a little bit more tailored and more interesting to you than just firing off like all these CVs that are looking the same. So I think generally speaking, we need to understand that in academia, like many PhDs, including myself, I didn't know this back in the days, so I was doing the same mistakes as well. So yeah, I think we just need to understand that and get better at that with time, and then yeah, I think that could be a start. And then slowly, of course, it's a journey at the end of the day, right? So it takes time. You discover things that you didn't know before. You adapt your trajectory accordingly as well. So yeah, it's just you need to take it from there, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That again, thank you for your time and just kind of talking about your journey and your new book. And you said it comes out, it should be released on next Monday, correct?
Yep.
Awesome.
24. Yep.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Matteo.
All right. Thank you.